There's something timeless about a Ferris wheel. Unlike roller coasters or spinning rides, it moves slowly, quietly lifting people high above the ground for a peaceful view of the world below. But Ferris wheels weren't originally built just for fun. The very first one was actually created as a bold engineering challenge, America's answer to the Eiffel Tower. Today, Ferris wheels can be found in amusement parks, beaches, and city skylines around the world. But how did this giant spinning wheel become one of the most recognizable attractions ever made? Let's take a ride through the history of the Ferris wheel right here on History of Simple Things. Long before the modern Ferris wheel existed, people were already experimenting with rotating rides. Early versions appeared centuries ago in places like Bulgaria, Turkey, and parts of the Middle East. These primitive wheels were much smaller and simpler than what we know today. Instead of giant metal structures powered by engines, these early wheels were usually made from wood. People sat in hanging baskets or chairs attached to the rim, while workers manually turned the wheel from the ground. Sometimes animals were used to help rotate them. These rides were mostly seen during festivals and fairs. They weren't designed to reach massive heights, they were simply meant to give people a fun spinning experience. Still, the basic idea was already there. A giant rotating wheel carrying passengers through the air. But nobody had yet imagined turning it into a gigantic engineering marvel. In 1889, the world gathered in Paris for the World's Fair, and standing at the center of the event was a structure unlike anything people had ever seen before, the Eiffel Tower. At the time, many people thought the tower looked strange and impossible. But once it was completed, it became the symbol of modern engineering. Millions of visitors traveled just to see it. A few years later, the United States planned its own massive event, the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Organizers wanted an attraction that could rival the Eiffel Tower and amaze the world. But there was a problem. America didn't want to simply copy France by building another tall tower. They wanted something original, something people had never seen before. That challenge eventually landed in the hands of an engineer named George Washington Gale Ferris, Jr. George Ferris was a bridge engineer who specialized in steel structures. When he proposed building a gigantic rotating wheel taller than most buildings of the time, many people thought he was crazy. The idea sounded dangerous, a massive wheel carrying hundreds of passengers high above the ground. In the 1890s, it seemed impossible, but Ferris believed steel could handle the weight. After months of convincing investors and organizers, construction finally began. The original Ferris wheel was enormous for its time. It stood around 264 feet tall, which is about the height of a 26-story building. It featured 36 giant wooden cars, and each car could hold around 60 people. Altogether, the wheel could carry more than 2,000 passengers at once. When it debuted at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, crowds were stunned. Some people were excited, others were terrified. Many visitors had never been that high above the ground before. Remember, airplanes didn't exist yet. Skyscrapers were still rare. For ordinary people, riding the Ferris wheel was one of the closest things to flying. And surprisingly, it worked beautifully. The wheel rotated slowly and smoothly, giving passengers breathtaking views of Chicago and the fairgrounds below. Almost immediately, it became one of the biggest attractions of the event. The success of the Ferris wheel wasn't only about fun, it also represented something much larger. At the time, industrial nations were competing to show off their technological power. Giant structures symbolized progress, intelligence, and national pride. The Ferris wheel proved that American engineers could create something just as bold and impressive as the Eiffel Tower. It also demonstrated the growing strength of steel construction. During the late 1800s, steel was transforming architecture around the world. Bridges became longer, buildings became taller, and suddenly, enormous rotating wheels became possible too. In many ways, the Ferris wheel was both an amusement ride and an engineering advertisement. Despite becoming famous, the original Ferris wheel had a surprisingly sad fate. After the World's Fair ended, the wheel was dismantled and moved to another location in Chicago. Later, it was relocated again to St. Louis for the 1904 World's Fair, but maintaining such a huge structure was expensive. Eventually, the wheel was demolished in 1906 using controlled explosives. Today, the original Ferris wheel no longer exists. Still, its influence spread everywhere. Soon, cities and amusement parks around the world began building their own versions. What makes Ferris wheels special is that they offer something many modern attractions don't: stillness. Roller coasters are exciting because they move fast. Ferris wheels are memorable because they move slowly. That slow movement gives people time to look around, relax, talk, and enjoy the view. It turns a simple ride into an experience. There's also something symbolic about Ferris wheels. They rise, pause at the top, then descend again. For many people, they represent reflection, romance, nostalgia, or childhood memories. And despite all the technological changes in the world, the basic idea has remained almost identical to George Ferris's original vision from the 1890s. From hand-powered wooden wheels at ancient festivals to gigantic observation wheels lighting up modern skylines, the Ferris wheel has traveled through more than a century of history. What began as an ambitious engineering challenge became one of the world's most beloved attractions. And even today, stepping onto a Ferris wheel still creates the same feeling people experienced back in 1893. The excitement of slowly rising above the world and seeing everything from a brand new perspective. Not bad for a giant spinning wheel. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.